looking at this video today that a tiki oh my god, I literally cannot say that name. But yeah, we're gonna be looking at that versus Dandy Man. Both are really good players. Dandy Man is exceptionally good. I've definitely played him before. And Atiki wanted me to review the Paisley Ditto with them. So he's a lighter one, just player 2 over here, just so it won't be too confusing. And the way this matchup works is basically it's all about mix-ups. This matchup is super neutral heavy, and you have to not be afraid to press fast buttons when needed. When fighting Peach, it's all about seeing where exactly does she like to move. Like, what area does she like to use float? And stage control is incredibly important in this matchup. Because, being cornered by Peach is horrible, and especially in the Ditto, it's just really bad. And just something to keep in mind with any game when you're playing the Ditto is it's all about resource management. So it's basically whoever gets more out of the resources and whoever gets more hits overall will win. Especially in a game like Ultimate, where with Peach, mix-ups are extremely important, and Peach has a lot of mix-ups to work with. So you have to be very comfortable playing in the air as well as on the ground. You don't want to force your way at Peach because she has a very good defensive game. And whoever has the lead can kind of just camp, and the other Peach has to approach, and Peach doesn't really have the best approach options out of any character. So it's kind of just a way, so you have to realize what Peach's strengths and weaknesses are and kind of abuse them in this matchup. Another big one is her recovery is very slow. It's very good, but it's not very fast. It's not like Wolf where it's very bursty, where just like he side Bs and it's like, that's it, I'm at ledge now. It's not like that. So you can actually kind of pressure her off stage and keep her in the corner. Peach also really struggles to land. So if a lot of Peaches will try to, everybody does it. They'll down air out of hit stun or mash out of hit stun. They'll just down air in the air. Everyone does it. So you have to not let Peach land for free. And you have to really, really be aware of all of your mix-ups in this matchup. It's very important. I think the thing with this matchup is whoever is better at utilizing their movement mix-ups as well as their what moves they're using, like high and low mix-ups, are very important. And whoever's more comfortable using turn-ups and platforms. But Peach is a pretty complex character, so I'd say the more you know her toolkit and the more you know how to abuse her weaknesses will get you those hits, and the more hits you get, you'll win. So let's kind of get into this. Okay, so I'm going to look at this from both perspectives a little bit, just to see what both players are doing good and what both players are not doing very well. What you want to do in the Ditto is not pull this turn up. You really need stage control first and foremost, and I really like Dandy Man over here just didn't do that. He dropped through the platform. He was like, okay, I'm going to go to center stage first. See, he could have actually just went right here, and he would have been in a great spot. So that's kind of the power of stage control, not just matchups like this, but in the Ditto especially, where stage control is so important. And if you're cornered, you're more likely to get hits on you or hits on your opponent, if that makes sense. So just something to keep in mind. I'm going to be looking at what both of these players are doing right and wrong and kind of looking at those interactions to kind of teach you how to play the Ditto. Let me see what is going on with the settings. Let's kind of do that because this quality was looking a little suspicious. Were we recording? Good. So yeah, just opposite echo there. He goes for a back air. So in this matchup, one thing you have to keep in mind is back air is very good. Back air with Peach is great in every matchup, but it's really good in this one especially, as we'll see, because you can be able to clank with turn-ups and then shield very quickly when needed. Fair is too slow, but it can be really good for stuffing out floats or stuffing out the other Paisley player's movement and landings if you know where they're going to be. So yeah, it's a lot of movement, and that's how this matchup works, is you have to use a lot of fade back movement and kind of slowly try to see what they do after. So he does that and then retreats. Does that, kind of moves, and then they're both retreating a lot, which is pretty normal for Peach players. You can kind of overextend a little bit. One way you can do this is like jump, throw, float with the turnip. and try to use the turnips as a way to like kind of condition them and see where they're going to be before you make any hard reads first. So it's good on him not to throw it immediately, but it's just something to keep in mind. You don't want to be really linear with how you use turnips because, again, it's that mix-up game. You need to be non-linear with your movement, what buttons you're pressing, and how you use turnips. So he does that. He kind of throws it there. He's like, I think you're going to come in at me with an aggressive option, so I'll use that. Interesting. And then he kind of overextends with the float because he's seeing what Dannyman is doing. It's kind of like, I'll go in here, and then I'll dash, and then I'll kind of like dash back or be in the air. So it's really good on this part. Down air. That was very good. I like that he jumped away here. So when in disadvantage versus Peach, don't try to contest it. Like, don't run off this platform. Don't try to jump over here. It's just not worth it. It's just better to go in the corner sometimes and not take any extra hits if you don't need to. And as you'll see throughout this set, I'm going to mention it a lot. And it's that you really don't want to take too many hits. You want more hits on the other Paisley player. Back here. But yeah, here's the other issue. You have to push your advantage. Peach doesn't have the best disadvantage state, so after you got that back air, you could have chased them with something and try to get their landing. Only time I would do this is if you send them super far off stage, but it's just better to press your advantage at that point and try to catch the other Peach's landing. But yeah, that's what we were talking about with back air. You can do something like this in some projectile matchups, is where you use back air to clank with the projectile, slowly close space and shield. So this is really smart on Dannyman's part. He's like, okay, I see you with the turnip, but Peach's ground game is so strong that you can use ground flow aerials to kind of clank with them and shield immediately, which is pretty good. So I like that option. But oh my god, I'm just gonna say AT for the rest of this because I just can't say that name correctly. But AT saw the way he likes to move is he uses a move and then uses something defensive or retreats. So I like this fair option from him. And then he decides to chase him. But he notices he's kind of back airing, like out of hit stun or trying to land. So you can do one or two things here. You can back off, like what he was doing. Or you could try to trade, because Peach is very good at trading. And you know, you will take a hit, but they're also going to take a hit and be off stage, so it's much better for you. But backing off isn't bad either. You're still keeping stage control, which is super important. Okay, so something with this ledge trap, I like this idea. Where you throw it up, you go back, and then you try to, use a ground float aerial. Most people will shield while this turnip is falling, or stay in this place. Something to keep in mind. I don't know. I've done this ledge trap a lot of times, and like 90% of the time, most people will just hold shield here. Especially if you come at them with like the aggressive option that's safe on shield, like the ground float forward air. Just keep pressuring their shield. They could roll, but it's very risky to roll against Peach in general. Yeah, definitely don't commit to those side Bs too early. You want to be much safer with stuff like ground flow back airs in the corner. And one nice thing you can do while this turnip is falling is you can go for a JCFF back air like right here and recatch it while also being safe on shield. And if they roll, you already back aired, so you're going to be facing towards them and you can just throw the turnip. So definitely there's a better way to execute that. Just the side B was way too committal. You want to save those side Bs for much later at high percent where you can kind of just like get a kill or your opponent's like, is he going to side B me? I'll just panic roll. And then it's a bait and use as pressure rather than at this percent where it sends them off stage but you don't get much reward off of it. Interesting, we're using a lot of ground movement. I'm not seeing them use a lot of platforms. It's a lot of throw the move, nair, retreat, where you can start to like slowly close the gap with walking here. But yeah, I like that he chased him here. And we pull a turnip. I like that he pulled it on the platform. It's a lot better to pull turnips on platforms against a lot of characters in this game. Because Peach actually has the luxury of getting around platforms with her movement, with float, that not a lot of people can do. So I like that he pulled it on there. I don't agree that he like kind of just fell through it. Because he kind of got hit. But I like keep pulled on the platform. It's better to do that in this matchup than like pull it on the ground and then you get hit by like a ground flow back air or a down tilt. But yeah, you just have to play patient here, and that's what we were talking about with the back air, where you can back air here, kind of get rid of the turnip, and then shield. Because remember, if you throw the turnip, if you have a turnip in hand and I shield, you can't grab me. You have to like Z-drop grab, which is pretty weird and committal, and it's like nobody does that. But you could have just like shielded right here instead of just, yeah. Interesting. I like how he was non-linear here with the turnout. Where he pulled it, he's like, okay, I'm going to float backwards with the turnout, which is incredibly threatening. Because think about it. If you see a Peach floating backwards, you're thinking they're either going to throw the turnout or they're going to back air. But he does nothing. He just goes back. He just uses it as a way to threaten space or force you to retreat, which is very smart on his part. I really like that he did that. And then he decides to throw it. So it's kind of like we were talking about, be very non-linear with how you use turnips. How do you get that kill? Oh, he low profiled it, yeah. Honest mistake. Well, just a smash ultimate thing. Interesting, I think the biggest thing I'm seeing is both of these players really aren't mixing it up in the air. Like, you can just jump float right here, floating backwards with the turnip. And you can always reset to this platform. Because, see, he's throwing it on the ground. We haven't really been seeing a lot of anti-airs besides maybe the occasional ground flow up air. So I think air movement at this point in the game is really good. Because I'll force you to swing the air with a fair and overextend towards me. And it just mixes up my movement a little bit to make me unpredictable. And you know, if you're unpredictable, it's harder for you to get those hits on me, right? Back air war, you're going to have a lot of these in this matchup. Back air, shield, and yeah, you're just going to have these wars occasionally. Sometimes you can try to get a parry or float, like we were talking about. Hasn't been a lot of air movement so far, where you could have done this and then just like floated like right here, avoid the back air, and then you could have just done something like down air. I don't agree with this because you really need to use all of your mix-ups. I don't agree with this floating off stage. You kind of did it earlier. And the thing is, float is super good at ledge because what you can do is you have so many mix-ups at your disposal. You have so many mix-ups at your disposal where you can kind of just like float and JCFF off of ledge, or do something like jump and float off of ledge and then air dodge, or go to this nearby platform. You can do a rising nair that auto cancels in the air and like jump and float. And if you have a turnip, you have even more mix-ups. So throwing that turnip and float kind of threw away two mix-ups that are crucial in the corner, especially in the Ditto. Back air. So we're doing a lot of back air ledge traps. Just pretty normal. What you can do here, just don't force your way out. Because I've been seeing like you've been standing here and you want to get out as soon as possible. And you can't do that versus Peach. You have to play it patient. You have to just kind of let the other Peach player do their thing. Don't be afraid to just be here. And then sometimes you can jump away. Or just like double jump over Peach if you want to. Because jumping over Peach can be okay as a mix-up. Or you can start walking and shielding. Sometimes you can even crouch in the corner if the other Paisy player likes to throw out fairs. But definitely just keep it in the corner. Just play patient in the corner. Uh-oh. Okay. That was kind of risky. This is what we mean, where Peach is a good recovery, but it's very slow. Look at this. Like, it's not very fast. You can always just go out there and hit them. If they're doing that. It's not very fast. Peach's recovery isn't very fast, so if you can get her in that up B spot off stage, you're in a great spot. Nice. I mean, it was good. Like, you read the regular getup, which most people will do in this game. And you did that. We messed up, but you got the combo starter. It was worth practicing. Oh! But this is kind of what we mean, where these down tilts, very unpredictable. and it just helps your item game. So a good item game definitely helps like a lot in this matchup for sure. Let me go back. Yeah, see, you could just throw the turnip like right there, and you would have been in a great spot because the up B is very slow. Ooh, interesting. Throw the turnip, doesn't nair, but he jumps and fairs. I like how he doesn't hold forward in the corner here. He's just like, I'm gonna just jump up and hold back here. Throw it, and then, yeah. So I think this is a decent approach in this matchup, where you kind of throw this, deny this float space from the opponent, especially if they like to retreat on the ground, or float right here. So this turnip ends up covering a lot of options, and then you don't hold forward after you do it. But he ends up toting anyway, so he gets rewarded for it. Ooh. Yeah, so this is something you have to watch out at these percent. Don't go for back air. Don't go for this immediate back air. If you are going to do a down throw, try to read the next option. Don't go for this back air where you can get reversal, especially by other characters with really broken back airs. So instead, what you could have done here, grab. You could either do a forward throw, which most people aren't expecting because they'll DI because they're expecting like a down throw or back throw. Or you can just try to you can jump float here, try to bait him to jump here, and then you can just like go for an up air. So there's a lot better options you can do at that percent instead of doing the down throw back air, because rage definitely kind of messes up the throw angle. So pull turnip here, good. Okay, interesting mix-up. You know, we're finally going into the air. We're gonna... Okay, yeah, so it's an interesting mix-up, because he's been on the ground the whole time, so he definitely goes for the high mix-up, where he just floats and down air. One thing to keep in mind is if you are going to go in the air, definitely always mix up your float heights. Don't always be at this height with Peach. It's very predictable, and you want to sometimes be a little bit higher, because sometimes you can do down air, and then you can just like go to the nearby plat, which is great to reset. Plat movement is another thing you can use to mix up, because like we said, matchups is just all about mix-ups. So being able to utilize plats fairly well is super helpful. Let me see. Down air. And see, he's even starting to go in the air too because he notices. But this is something you want to avoid. Don't, at this range, don't down air this far away. It's, I mean, I think you were expecting to roll. Let me see. Yeah, he was way too far away to do that. Because if you're doing this, this is super reactable, and characters with disjoints or Peach with a good back air can just do like rising back air and just stuff you out. So instead, what you could have done, which is a better play instead of approaching with down air, is just float in place like right here. Don't even hold forward. You can just float, react to your opponent. You're like, oh, you're pulling a turnip? I'll just float forward, fall, and then just go for pressure. Instead of going for this down air nair, which doesn't net you anything at all. It's kind of like showing some habits and some cards to your opponent, and you really don't want to do that too much in the Paisy Ditto. So we're going for a lot of down airs, and now we're just being in the air a lot. So now we can go for more grounded mix-ups. So yeah, I like this float. Being in the air, you don't want to be too close to like Peach's fair range, because remember, when you're using float with Peach, you always want to see your opponent's aerial burst options, or burst range. Like, you can react to another Peach player's throwing turnip or a fair here, kind of like what he does, and then you can kind of mix up in the air with like a landing aerial or something like that. But it's much better to do those reactionary floats to like condition, react to your opponent in the air, rather than just like holding forward as Peach. Ooh, okay. So I'm seeing Dandyman kind of has a habit where he likes to land with some sort of immediate option. So, because he's not only done like Bear, but he's also done Toad. So this would be a great place to kind of get a kill versus him, instead of just holding forward. So you should have done what you were doing before. You like do this, you throw it because you're like, okay, I think it'll punish it. And then you could just like float right here and kind of bait landing. So I want to see him do that next to kind of get the kill. Because you can like bait someone to land with an aggressive option and whiff punish with like side B. And I know this because he used it at such a low percent that it wouldn't have mattered. So this is definitely a panic option on his part. Fair, just defending center stage, very smart. Because, you know, once your opponent's in the corner, you don't want to hold forward. I mean, you don't want to give up any extra stage. So this was a nice aggressive fair. Throw it. Oh, we SD? Okay, let's go back. So we're kind of floating, doing a lot of movement. Oh, nice. Let me go back. Doing a lot of movement. Throws it. I wouldn't have thrown it there. I like how Dandyman is just like keeping it and moving light. Like you just want to play patient at this point. Peach really gets rewarded for patience. So holding your turnip for like prolonged periods and moving a lot is good. Especially since you can use stuff like what we saw before with like Z-drop down tilt or Z-drop aerials or even like floating with the turnip or using ground moves with the turnip in hand. Really helps, makes your item game more unpredictable. So just something to keep in mind. The better you are with turnips, the more mix-ups you have against the other Paisley player, and the better. And he kind of backs off and then goes for an aggressive option. So third turnip. Nice. Okay. Seeing a lot of turnip pulls. So in these spots, try to use more walking to kind of close the distance. Where instead of just doing this, because it seems like Dandyman will always be over here, or after he throws out an option, like an aggressive option, then he'll kind of retreat back. So we can kind of use that to our advantage by kind of slowly closing the gap and forcing him to do something and get more information there. Kind of showing us more habits that we can use to our advantage and mix up around. Like it's okay to play aggressive sometimes, it's just the mix up. Nice. I like what he did here. He hasn't used this ledge trap yet, and against with ledge traps as Peach, you always want to mix it up. Like you throw the turnip, like we haven't seen this, he's like, normally he would throw the turnip and then go for a nair. Then he mixes it up because he notices that AT is always over here, floating off around this area, or just in this area with float. And that's just so important when fighting Peach, is you want to know where she's going to be. She's not very fast like Sheik or Joker or Zero Suit, where it's like she could be at anywhere at any moment. She's always around some sort of bubble that you have to think about. So I think it was really good for him to call him out because he's always noticing he's over here. And here you can also threaten him off stage. Like, don't throw this other turnip, just go out there because he has to up B at this point. So you can just go out there and then threaten with like a fair. And instead of just pulling that turnip there. So something to keep in mind for Dandyman's part, you can always go out there and be aggressive because again, Peach's recovery is pretty slow. And you didn't have to pull this other turnip here. Like you could have thrown it and then just try to go for a down tilt like right here. So something to keep in mind. There are definitely ways for you to sabotage the other Peach player's recovery. It's pretty slow. Take advantage of that. So just holding it, I like that. Dandyman's doing a really good job at just mixing up his ledge traps here. And then he does this, which is pretty smart. He's like, okay, I'm going to give you some space, make you think, and then normally he will dash back in the corner. And so he does that, and then he holds shield to hold space, plays patient, and then he just goes for a nair. So very solid stuff. But yeah, I'm not seeing him get his recovery enough. Like, you can definitely push it a little farther here, especially since he has already wasted float. Okay, now he has float again, and then he just does that. But you could have also gotten him off stage earlier. Nice patience. But, you know, we mess up the combo sometimes because of Wi-Fi, but that's okay. I like the patience here on Dandyman's part. Just holding the turnip. Just very content at just holding it kind of forcing AT to use the aggressive option first. But instead you want to play more, but let's look at it from the other side. You want to play more patient at this percent because you have the lead. Peach with the lead is so good because it's very hard to hit her, and she can live a very long time if you play evasive. So there's no need to press the issue here, especially you're fighting a Peach with a turnip in hand. Like, why would you go forward? You use the platforms, use back air to kind of like hit the turnip back or clank with it, and just kind of go from there. Because I'm seeing a lot of these fairs, and I'm not seeing a lot of you just floating to kind of bait him here. What you can do is just kind of like float here as a way to condition him to throw the turnip in a certain spot. And then you can just like clank with back air and kind of move forward. So you can use float as a way to force the other Paisley player to overextend, especially when you have a lead. I think it's a lot smarter to go for that. But he messed up the combo there. It's perfectly fine. What you can do instead, which is optimal, is go for a Z-drop. You can go for a Nair, Z-drop Nair here, and it's true on Peach. So it's really good in the Ditto if you're able to get that. And that's why having a good item, being able to play the game with the turnip in hand is just so beneficial in a lot of spots. So I think it's definitely, I think Dandyman definitely has a better item game overall. But just for anybody who's wondering about the Ditto, definitely use all of your options with items. Don't always throw it. You can still play the game while holding it and get a lot off of it. And there's the aggressive option while he lands. Oh, he could have gone for grab. I think grab was much smarter there. I like what he did here. He's threatening space, does that. But he should have gone for grab instead of dash attack there. I think it would have been better. Because at these higher percents, you haven't really gone for a lot of tomahawks yet. So it's just another mix-up you can use to add to get something like a free grab into pummel, throw them off stage, maybe kill them. So, like I said, all about mix-ups. There's the landing. Oh, you could just grab him there. Oh my god! Okay, we're just kind of messing around. But my computer's kind of broken, so I'll just have to reset for game 2. Goes it, goes, and then we kind of... Dandyman, like, toad like 3 times, and Golf Club like 3 times. But I want to mention something with Golf Club. Golf Club actually is kind of good in this matchup. So, against characters like Puff and Yoshi, where they are floaty with not the best landing options, Golf Club ends up being a pretty good anti-float and landing tool. Because it's a disjoint, so it's actually kind of good. I mean, he's kind of spamming it, but I just want to mention that, because it's actually a really good mix-up to catch other Peach players' landings. Because it outranges back air, it's faster than fair, so it's actually a good disjoint to catch the other Peach's landings. So I definitely agree with it, especially if they like to approach with stuff like down air. I think it's a good anti-air option against landing options and landing aerials. So yeah, seeing a lot of that into turnip into Nair. But I want to see one other mix-up. One other, because you know, you have to be predictable with what you do after. So you throw it, then you can float like right here. And I think that's a pretty good mix-up because there hasn't been a lot of like throw out a move float to kind of condition and avoid grounded moves, because both of these Paisley players have been playing pretty grounded. And I want to see more air mix-ups. So I think doing Nair, doing the turnip into like just jump float, because you can also just like jump waveland to platform, because you have to remember you always have this platform here which you can use. So yeah, I haven't been seeing a lot of just floating in place from Dandyman to kind of bait options. It's been more ground movement. Yeah, that was a decent way to position float, like right there. But yeah, another thing I want to see more of is like to catch landings is you can kind of just like, you know, because Dandyman's doing a lot of aggressive options on landing, just like run up shield. Throw him. Ooh, don't throw that yet. Oh, okay. It ended up working. I wouldn't have thrown it because, you know, while you're ledge trapping, Stitch is really broken at this percent because it's so much pressure. Because if you mess up once, you die. And this is where that item game we were talking about really comes into play, because you could just play the game with a Stitch in hand, and it's like if you mess up at any point, you die. So it's like kind of a win, a checkmate in a way, if you ever get the Stitch at this percent. But it somehow hits, but okay. But you can't throw it there. Like, why would you throw it there? Like, no. Play with the item in hand. It helps so much in this matchup. But like here again, Danny Man could have just gone out and like you could just float right here and fair. Like it's really, that's something you can do. Instead of going for the, oh my God. See, and it actually works because it doesn't have much end lag, so you can catch it to catch, so you can use golf club to catch aggressive landings. Dash attack somehow. Yeah, you should have waited there, for sure. And you want to space it a little bit farther. But I think up smash would have been the best play. Or just shielding, because you can parry and then you get a smash attack punish, because Danny Man lands aggressively. And then, yeah, we whip punish with the back air. So, get him there, you know, don't hold forward when landing, and then just kind of wait. There's a time and place for it, but we were kind of just messing around. So yeah, this next game, we're on the same stage, because they wanted me to review the first 2 games. But yeah, I want to see more air movement, and kind of just playing with the turnip in hand on AT's part. Air movement, a little bit more with Dandy Man, and also just the platforms in general help a lot, too. As well as using float from ledge as a mix-up is really big. And walking can also be pretty decent, too. So yeah, it's kind of like we were saying, we're kind of just playing patient and neutral, kind of seeing where the Paisley player likes to be, and then he sees he comes in with an... Danny Man eventually comes in aggressive, so he defends space there with the dash attack. I think ground flow nair would have been a little better, but dash attack's fine. Yeah, you could have just like shielded the landing. But yeah, Danny Man I think is being too aggressive when AT has the turnip. Get in there. I would try to bait him to throw it, but that works too, because you are in the air, and down air is a good choice for if the other Paisley player likes to hold turnip and shield. It's kind of like that Diddy matchup we were talking about, where if they're holding an item and shield, you could just play airborne, and it's really good. Oh, okay. There, Diddy Man's starting to finally catch the slow recovery. I like how he's defending space here, though, because this is what you want to do. Keep the other Paisley player in the corner. Use float to kind of play around those burst options. Use fair. But Danny Man also kind of counters that really well with using the platform. And this is kind of what we were talking about, where if you know how to use platforms with your movement, it's another mix-up you have at your disposal against the other Paisley player. And see, it helps to get out of the corner. So I really like that. Just something to point out. Something that AT could also be using. He could have chased him there. See, he goes for the down air, just mixes up the ledge trap. I think he was trying to go for a nair there, which is smart. But there's only one problem with it, where you cross him up and then now you're in the corner. And I don't agree with it. The nair was good. I think instead he could have done a rising down air, because rising down air is definitely much better to go for in these spots, where you throw the turnip, do a rising down air, and then you can drift either way, and then you can always jump away if you think the Paisley player is gonna like be aggressive with a ground move out of shield. So the nair was interesting. It's much better if you're both at center stage, where you can use JCFF nair. I think it's better to do more rising down air on shield. Interesting you didn't go to the platform. And then you could just jump wave land like right here. And it also can avoid the fair if you go like right here while you're wave landing. Rather than okay, so here, because they're using a lot of fair, there's one better option you can go for. Is you go for a double jump cancel fast fall nair. It will also catch the turnout, and it's -2 on shield. So it's super safe. I think double jump JCFF nair is really good in these spots in neutral, where it's a low committal option to kind of also deal with turnip and catch it, and it's really quick too. So I think it's much better to do that than using a slow fair. Fair's a lot better if you know they're going to retreat, or if you know exactly in the air they're going to be far away. So I think nair was definitely a better call here, because you haven't used it that much. Blow it up. I'm not seeing a lot of... The other thing I'm not seeing from both of these players is not a lot of grabs. Because like we said, if the turnip's coming down and you're right here, most people are going to just kind of be scared and shield. So like you can float right here. Well, you could float it a little earlier and then go back and then just go for a grab. So you could like float on the ground backwards because you know you're threatening that back air. And then you can just go and then release float and then just grab. It's all a bait just to keep them in shield. Or you can go for shield pressure. Either one works. Just remember, go for these tomahawks in the corner, especially around higher percent because people are more opting to shield. But the back air works too. So, Dandyman hasn't really been throwing the turnip up a lot either, and that's just a mix-up I want him to remember. It's a way to keep them shielding or in the corner. And then you can also play around the platforms while the turnip's in the air, and there's just, again, it's more mix-ups you can add to your disposal. Throw it. Or you could go for down tilt, because you do have the turnip. If you do want to keep it, you can just go run up here, go for Z drop down tilt right here, try to get it, and then you're shielding right here, which is super good in case they do something like regular get up. And then you can react. If they roll, you can always just back air behind you with the turnip. Just something to keep in mind. Z drop down tilt is pretty good in the corner or when the Paisley player is like drifting to ledge like this. But I like how he's patient here. I don't agree with the golf club here. You wanna, if you were gonna try to, I know try to get the fair here, but instead you want to try to bait it first. Bait AT to use the fair out of the corner instead, rather than going for that, because that's kind of what killed him last game. And you have been standing here, but a nice mix-up is using something like JCFF and then shielding. Or, yeah, just using your movement to kind of bait an option, because normally he's going to fair or be around this area in the corner. Yeah, use more of those nairs when you're around, like we were talking about earlier, where you're using... Where you can like do this, float, where you can do double jump JCFF nair, or you can float, jump, and then land with the nair. Nair's just so good in this matchup, in these close quarters, especially to cross up. Well, that just worked. Yeah, use more of those nairs when you're around center stage. It's pretty good, because a lot of Paisley's will try to throw turnip and then fair, or just try to fair from like far away. And nair's just a quicker option you can use as a mix-up. Fair is more as a timing mix-up as Peach, because it's slower. That's a positive way to look at it. Nice. And see, the platform movement, it's really good. You can use it to kind of trick your opponent, condition them, because you can think about platforms. You can think of float as a platform. That's what I want to say. You think of float as a platform you can put anywhere, and the platforms are also a place you can use to reset your jump and float. Interesting choice with the side B. Because auto-cancel side B in this matchup, it's kind of just another mix-up, you know? If I know where the Peach is going to float, which is going to be a little farther away, I can try to read them with this auto-cancel side B. Or if I know they like to pull turnip from far away, I can use auto-cancel side B all the way over here. It's an aerial burst option rather than a grounded one. So it's another mix-up you could use to add to your disposal. I'd probably wait to use it for a little bit later and auto-cancel so you know you can just land and then shield right here. So it's pretty good. And it's also good when they're holding turnip and shield. So I'd say it's a decent burst option if you know where they're going to be. But maybe not at this percent because AT has been really grounded for the most of this game, so it's not that great. Probably better for that platform movement you were using earlier. Okay, now we're using it. Yep, and I haven't been seeing a lot of overshooting either, because both players have been kind of been around the same area when using movement. No one's been like too aggressive or been trying to take a lot of space aggressively for most of the game to keep stage control. It's been a lot of this, where it's like, you're both here, you're up close, and then you just like disengage. And you gave up all that stage. And I like Dandyman kind of overshot to chase you, in case you like dash back some more. Dandyman's using a lot of down air for ledge traps, and it can be okay. It can catch jump, but the way you want to use down air when you're using for ledge traps is you want to use it backwards, right? And the way you do that is you want to face backwards in using down air. You do like jump rising down air here, so you can drift this way and still threaten the back air to catch regular get up. So I think that's a much better choice rather than going for like forward rising down air or float down air here. You want to be more backwards with it, so when you land, you can still threaten the back air when ledge trapping. I think that's a lot better. Whether rising or ground float. And here, if the Paisley player likes to approach in the air with float, one great way you can do that is just use rising back air. Back air is a rising back air with Peach is still pretty good. A lot of people think like, oh my god, ground flow back air is really good. You can still use rising up close to kind of stuff out a lot of options, or rising there. I think rising back air is a little bit better in this matchup to stuff out the floats. But yeah, I think that's a lot better. Yeah, you shouldn't have overextended here, because we know Dandyman most likely will land with some immediate option here, whether it be aggressive or this immediate air dodge. So you should have floated, waited, and maybe shielded on the ground, and then just went for the punish, rather than overextending here, where now you're in the corner. Fair. Nice walking. I like that. It's a good ground movement mix-up you use. Use walking in case he tries to land, and then you stuff him out in the air with an air. So it's like that rising back air thing we were talking about earlier. Another thing you can do here is, because everybody's been like throwing it on the ground for the most part, just throw it up here, and I think that's a better option to kind of control the space here. Because they most likely, Dandyman will play defensive here. Oh no, Dandyman's player 1. This is kind of confusing. But yeah, player 2 will kind of just like play defensive if you throw it up. And it's a good way to kind of, you can even just catch it again with like a down tilt or a rising downer here. Throwing the turnip up is also pretty good in neutral if you know how to use it. Another way to think about it is if you throw an item up and you use a laggy move and someone tries to grab you, then as the turnip falls down, then the turnip will hit them and you won't take a hard punish. So you can throw turnip up and throw something out like a golf club, and then if someone tries to punish you, the turnip will come back down and hit them. So that's another way you can use throwing up items. So it's just another mix-up you can add to your disposal, rather than just like always throwing it there. You could have also just kept it. And like I was saying, instead of these fairs, go for nair, kind of what we were seeing earlier, where you use this and then you kind of fall with the nair. It's much safer. Or you can do double jump, or just JCFF nair, double jump JCFF nair. It's a lot better. It's a lot safer because it's easier to catch turnip with the slow fair than the slow fair. And another thing is go for more approaching with nair instead of dash attack, because it's safer on shield. So you can just kind of run up nair and it's maybe get a grab or shield after. So I think that's a lot better than trying to whip punish with these dash attacks, where you need them for kill percent. But I like this option, of course. It's kind of like walking as a grab mix-up, very smart. You could also just float here if you want, and it will also cover something like the roll out of shield, or condition them to overextend with the fair. And then he goes back with an aggressive option, but he doesn't hold forward. And see, that's why nair is a lot better, because it's much safer and quicker. Oh my god, he's using so much Toad. Just gotta watch it. Toad can be an okay mix-up. You just have to be wise about when you use it, because it can work against people who are mashing, but the thing is, like we said in this matchup, it's all about not showing your cards too early and utilizing all of your cards, or aka your mix-ups. So it's good you did that. You could have just like shielded right there, because you're like, I think you're just gonna throw it on the ground, so I'll punish you with this aerial burst option. And it was good until that happened, where AT played patient and he realized you're most likely gonna panic as you land. But yeah, here Okay, so versus grounded moves, so if the other Paisy player is playing grounded, just go for something like a rising down here, kind of like we were talking earlier. So that would have been better instead of that. So if the Paisy player is doing a lot of ground flow aerials and back airs, don't be afraid to do something like a rising down air or a JCFF nair, which is much better. And if the Paisy player is going high, then you can do stuff like fair and ground flow up air. It's all about those high and low mix-ups, and it's a double-edged sword too, because you can also condition your opponent with those options. So the Ditto's this Ditto in particular is really complicated. There's so many mix-ups you can use and keep aware of, and also condition your opponent with. So yeah, I hope you're starting to see like this matchup's just, it's all about mix-ups and getting more hits on your opponent. And the more unpredictable you are, the better. Interesting pulling the turnip in the corner. You could have just pressured with more aerials. I like how he's playing patient in the corner, kind of forcing AT to force the issue first. But yeah, here you could have just shielded instead of going for Toad. I mean, the Toad was an interesting option, but you've used it too much to where it's just kind of gotten old at this point. You could have just shielded right here and went instead of going for the Toad. And also, we can hold this turnip as assurance for when we know Dandy Man might go for the Toad. So, picking on his habits, we can start to use the turnip a little bit more to counter his play style. And that's another way you can use float and turnips against the other Paisy player, is once you start seeing their habits, you can start forming your game plan around that and using your mix-ups around that. And baits and reads will become a lot stronger if you start getting information. So in neutral, you just have to play it patient, take notes, and then use your mix-ups from there, basically. He's been jumping. He's been doing a lot of retreating fair. So versus the fair, just don't be afraid to hold shield. He hasn't been going for a lot of tomahawks, so I think it would have been completely safe to just hold shield there. And that's something both players kind of need to work on, is go for more tomahawks in general. So hasn't really been threatening. Damien hasn't really been threatening that grab. He's done a lot of movement and pressing buttons in decent spots, but he then needs to go for the mix-up, which is threatening grab. And that also conditions people to roll, spot dodge, and then you can start playing around that to get kills. And then that's what you got to do. So he's starting to pick up on it. Paisy's recovery is pretty slow, so you just have to go out there and hit it. Don't be afraid. Aerial burst option. And I like that float right there. It was good. It was good. Where we do that, and after we use a move, we float. I would just wait here in case he tries to run up with shield or something. And then I'm still in the air with float. So I can use down air, and then if he doesn't drop shield, I can always just like jump away onto a platform, basically. Which is something both players haven't been using too much. It's just like resetting with platforms. Like Dandyman's been moving around the platforms, but he hasn't been resetting back to them with his movement. And yeah. Then we get down tilted. Something I want to mention with Peaches, when comboing other Peaches, when comboing floated characters, you want to try to use up air a little bit more. Not only to frame trap, stuff like air dodges, but getting them into a juggle scenario to where you can juggle the other Peach to get more damage. Because remember, Peach can't really land super well, or Daisy, and it just keeps them in the air forever. So ending combos with up air and frame trapping with up air like this is really smart. So definitely agree with that. Could have just went forward a little bit more there. And like we said, if the other Paisy likes to play grounded, doing something like this rising down air is really smart. Because it's like most of the time you're probably going to throw it, so this rising down air was smart. Then we're going to still be in the air because you're going to be grounded, and I'll go for this JCFF nair. So that's kind of those two options in one combined to counter grounded Paisy players. Now if it's the opposite, if they're in the air, we can use fair, we can use more turn-ups, we can use up air, and we can start using platforms and double jump mix-ups, and mixing up our float height around theirs to kind of counter their airborne game plan. So that's why it's a good mix to have both, because it's going to be harder to like counter your game plan, because Paisys are either super airborne they're super grounded like this, and you have to know how to play against both. Or yeah, Rising Backer is another good one against really airborne Paisley players. Or in throwing turnip up too. Oh, we SD'd. Save them! Oh, we SD'd! Oh, well. GG. But yeah, that's the Paisley Ditto in a nutshell. It's kind of a tutorial. I didn't go super, super hard into habits where I was like looking at every single thing. Like we looked at some of the high level VODs or some of those other ones. This was kind of a tutorial to know this matchup is all about mix-ups and just Paisley in general. Because the general challenge with playing Peach and Daisy is knowing all of their mix-ups. Because there's so many. You have turnips, you have turnips, ground flow aerials, you have flow, you have platforms, you have auto cancel side B. And that's not even getting to all her normals like down tilt, her smash attacks, her dash attack, all sorts of stuff. So having a good item game, a good movement game, and mixing up between high and low as Paisley is super, super, super important. Mixing up the ledge traps was really smart on Dandy Man, but I think AT was a little bit better on like the patience part and neutral. He kind of like waited out Dandy Man a little bit more. He kind of read his movement a little bit better, I think. Neither of them really were super aggressive off stage. Was just something you want to do. You kind of want to pressure Peach a little bit off stage. She has mix-ups, but again, she's not very fast. I think Dandy Man's item game was a little bit better, but I think AT overall was, since he played... Oh, Dandy Man was the red one. I'm kind of confused. But either way, I think AT was a lot better at reading Dandy Man's movement for sure. And in the corner, both of them didn't really use float off of ledge that much. It was kind of surprising. But yeah, I think overall, that's kind of all I wanted to say. So I hope this vid helps.